Hello there. In the next couple of minutes, I'll be presenting my rhetorical analysis about the speech of the ex-First Lady of the United States of America, Michelle Obama, in the Democratic National Convention on September 4 in Charlotte, North Carolina. So, the first thing that we notice is that the First Lady is thanking someone in the page 1, line 1 and 2. I quote, "Thank you so much, Elaine. We are so grateful for your family service and sacrifice, and we will always have your back." Elaine is someone we haven't been introduced to, but the First Lady is referring to Elaine Bry, a teacher and a military mom from Winona, Ohio, who introduced the First Lady before with her speech, where she mentions that many of her children are part of the military group from the United States of America. The next thing that we notice is an anaphora in lines 7, 8, 9, and 11. And as we can see here, the First Lady is using the phrase, I quote, "I have seen it," starting in 4 different sentences. After, we can see a repetition for the word girls. As we can see, she mentions the word girls throughout the text. As an example, in line 19, in line 24, also, if I remember well, in the last page, yes, in line 158. But coming back to the first page, we also see that the First Lady used a rhetorical question. I quote, "How will we keep them grounded under the glare of the national spotlight? How will they feel being uprooted from their school, their friends, and the only home they ever known?" Page 1, line 20, 21, and 22. So we can say that this is a rhetorical question, since the First Lady is not expecting an answer from the audience, and she's not either answering the same question. So after, we find also a personal anecdote. I quote, "Barack and I were both raised by families who didn't have much in the way of money or material possessions, but who had given us something far more valuable, their unconditional love." Page 2, line 32, 33, and 34. Well, I do believe that this is pathos, since the First Lady is working with emotions, and she is specifically mentioning their unconditional love, referring to their parents or great-parents. 2 lines after, in page 2, line 35 to 38, she gives us a personal anecdote. I quote, "My father was a pump operator at the city water plant, and he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when my brother and I were young. And even as a kid, I knew there were plenty of days when he was in pain. I knew there were plenty of mornings when it was a struggle for him to simply get out of the bed. But every morning, I watched my father wake up with a smile." So we can say that this is also pathos, since she is working with the emotions of the audience, giving a personal anecdote of hers. The next thing that I found was in page 2, line 54, where she is referring to Barack's grandmother, and she uses a metaphor. I quote, "But like so many women, she hit a black ceiling." That's a metaphor used in both British and American English, referring to a point after which you cannot go any further, usually improving your position at work. So the First Lady uses this metaphor in order to let us know that since Barack, since to let us know that Barack's grandmother had problems or struggles going furthering her position at work for being a woman. Then we can see a contrast in the lines 59 to 60. I quote, "They didn't begrudge anyone else's success or care that others had much more than they did. In fact, they admired it." So we can say this is a contrast since the First Lady is saying that their parents and grandparents were not, they didn't were jealous or they didn't begrudge the success of other people. However, she's mentioning that they admire it, which is a contrast. Then we find another anaphora in page 3, lines 63, 65, and 67. So as we can see, the First Lady started 3 different sentences with the same phrase. I quote, "We learned." Then we have another anaphora in page 3 in the lines 82, 83, and 84. So we know that so we can see that she starts the 3 different sentences with the same phrase, that's. Then in page 4, line 102, we find that the First Lady says, I quote, "Barack knows the American dream." And the American dream is the belief that anyone, regardless of where they were born or what class they were born into, can attain their own version of success in a society where upward mobility is possible for everyone. The American dream is achieved through sacrifice, risk-taking, and hard work, rather than by chance. So we know that's a very popular thing that the American people mention, the famous American dream. And in the same line, we found in page 4, line 102 to 106, I quote, "He wants everyone in this country to have that same opportunity, no matter who we are or where we're from, or what we look like, or who we love. And he believes that when you work hard and done well and walk through that doorway of opportunity, you do not slam it shut behind you. You reach back and you give other folks the same chances that help you succeed." So she's referring to what the Democrat Party in the USA fights for. I quote, "We're fighting on behalf of the notion that anyone from any walk of life should have a fair shot at the American dream." That's the main quote of the Democrat Party in the USA. After we find in page 4, line 106, 7, and 8, some ethos, since she says, I quote, "So, when people ask me whether being in the White House has changed my husband, I can honestly say that when it comes to his character and his convictions and his heart, Barack Obama is still the same man I fell in love with all those years ago." So I believe this is ethos, since the First Lady is trying to explain the people that she's trying to be someone trustworthy. She's trying to make the audience believe that Barack Obama is a good person through her. She's trying to be trustworthy. Then we find another anaphora in page 5, line 103, 45, 45, 146, and 147, since the First Lady is starting 1, 2, 3, 5 different sentences with the same phrase, if. Then after we have, "My daughters are still the heart of my heart and the center of my world." We can say that this is clearly a metaphor. Then we have, "God bless America." in the last line of the text, she says, "God bless you and God bless America." And God bless America and its derivatives didn't regularly enter the presidential fray until April 30 in 1933, when President Richard Nixon used it in the midst of the Watergate scandal, the Huffington Post reported. While that was the beginning, it wasn't until President Ronald Reagan regularly began using that term caught on. Ever since, it has been a standard remark made in the conclusion of many official presidential speeches. So, in general terms, we can say that the First Lady's speech has language, with emotional examples, an emotional tone, and many narratives of emotional events and personal emotional events. And the language situation was in a political convention that took place it was a Democratic National Convention that took place in North Carolina.